Special episode of To The Point and our exclusive poll on what the voters of Delhi think about next week's elections. In a moment, I'm going to be joined by the chairman of the Hindu group, N. Ram. Also joining me will be BJP national spokesperson Nirmala Sitharaman, as well as the Aam Aadmi Party's candidate from Ghaziabad, Shazia Ilmi. And of course, Nalini Singh is still with me. But first, Sanket is going to reveal to us who is the favourite candidate for Prime Minister in the eyes of the Delhi voter. Sanket, tell us the answer.
Absolutely, Karan. In fact, we asked these two questions also in our survey. Who should be the Prime Minister of this country? 44% say Narendra Modi. The figure for Arvind Kejriwal is 24%. For Rahul Gandhi, it's 19%. For Manmohan Singh, it's 4%, though he has quite categorically mentioned he's not in the fray. And then there are others, according to Delhi, who have 9% chance to actually become the Prime Minister. Then we asked another question to them, who should be the Chief Minister of Delhi? Harsh Vardhan of the Bharatiya Janata Party, 29%. Arvind Kejriwal, 19%, so his popularity seems to have gone down. And then this mysterious figure of others at 52%, Karan.
Thank you very much, Sanket. And Ram, let's start with that most striking figure about prime ministerial preferences. Did you notice that 44% of Delhi voters would rather have Modi, and that is more than the combined tally for both Arvind Kejriwal and Rahul Gandhi? How would you, as a journalist, interpret that incredible lead he's got over the two together?
It's not incredible or surprising, Karan, because people are realistic and they don't see Arvind Kejriwal or indeed Rahul Gandhi having any chance of becoming Prime Minister. So they're voting realistically, you can say, but it doesn't say anything about how the BJP will fare in Delhi vis-a-vis Aam Aadmi.
That's interesting. You're making an important distinction between how the party will fare and how its prime ministerial candidate is viewed. In other words, Mr. Modi is viewed quite separately and independently of the BJP. Is that a correct interpretation of your position? Did you hear me, Mr. Ram?
Oh, you're asking me, Karan?
I am indeed. Is that a correct interpretation of your position, that Mr. Modi is viewed independently and separately from the BJP?
Not entirely, but what I mean is people do not expect Kejriwal to be in the fray when it comes to choosing the Prime Minister, because his party will not get the number of seats. So it is, in a sense, an artificial question, an unreal question.
All right.
When you make the comparison.
Let me bring in Nirmala Sitharaman. Nirmala Sitharaman, there is a view that perhaps one reason why Mr. Modi, when asked the question, who is your favourite candidate for PM, comes out so far above the combination of Arvind Kejriwal as well as Rahul Gandhi, is because this is a Lok Sabha poll, not a Vidhan Sabha one. In your eyes, is that why he's got a clear edge? Not because the party is preferred, but because when it comes to the PM choice, it becomes a different entity.
Well, if you really want to go nitpicking on these details, you may say so. But after all, Mr. Modi and the BJP candidates are using the symbol of lotus, and it is on that every candidate canvasses for the election. You're right in saying that to an extent, that because it's a Lok Sabha election and because probably Kejriwal is viewed as a former chief minister and a chief ministerial candidate, people probably don't even take him at par with Mr. Modi. But the fact remains that Aam Aadmi Party and its chiefs popularity and probably image of somebody who can deliver on governance is definitely fast dwindling.
You know, one thing is true, Nalini, that if you go to that second question that Sanket informed us about, who would you prefer as Chief Minister, where the choice presented to the poll sample was between Harsh Vardhan and Kejriwal, there was a marked difference of 10%. 29 went for Harsh Vardhan, only 19 for Kejriwal. Does that suggest, in combination with the PM preferences, that in fact Arvind Kejriwal himself is slipping in the estimation and popularity that he had in Delhi earlier on?
You know, I think, Karan, what's happening is that there's been a fragmentation of their ideology is the sum of little acts that they have committed themselves to. So in fact, there is no, you know, one can't say Aam Aadmi Party stands for, except for corruption, anti-corruption banner that they first had. After that, we are not able to discern what exactly they stand for, except to, well, I don't need to go into the, you know, they will shoot off accusations at people. But what's very interesting and very clever that the Aam Aadmi Party has done, and this comes to Arvind Kejriwal's even 19%, is that they have been able to lure the Muslim vote to some extent. Your figures are also showing that. By earlier they talked against corruption, now they are against Modi and BJP. So now this obviously is yielding good harvest, because the Muslim vote will go to anybody who can defeat the BJP. The interesting thing is, so this ramps up his chief ministerial preference to 19% or whatever, 10%.
Otherwise it will be lower.
I have a feeling that people are looking at the other issues, the other agonies of their life, which is rising prices, which is you know, women's safety, hundreds of other things.
Aam Aadmi doesn't offer credible answers.
The Aam Aadmi, they think they offered answers for electricity charges, tariffs, and water.
And that's it.
But even the JJ clusters are saying, what happened to that?
Let me bring in Shahzad Ilmi at that point. Shahzad Ilmi, we're talking about our poll, and we're talking specifically about what the poll has revealed about two issues. Who is Delhi's favorite choice to be Prime Minister? And secondly, who would Delhi choose if they could choose a Chief Minister at this point of time? On the Prime Ministerial stake, the interesting thing is Mr. Modi has come in with 44% vote. 44% of Delhi voters would prefer Mr. Modi. And Arvind Kejriwal is only preferred by 24%, Rahul Gandhi only by 19%, which means Mr. Modi has more than Arvind Kejriwal and Rahul Gandhi combined. And the second thing that I want to join in before I get you to answer is the choice given in terms of chief ministership. Harshvardhan has got 29% people choosing him as their preferred chief minister. Arvind Kejriwal has only got 19%, a marked difference of 10%. Just 4 months after the Delhi elections, when everyone thought you and BJP were neck and neck, why do you think you've slipped?
You know, first of all, I won't take these opinion polls and surveys too seriously. You know what happened during Delhi elections, and even before the elections, people practically wrote our obituaries. We were given to believe, and people were given to believe, that we won't get more than 2 to 6 seats. But we saw what happened. There is indeed an undercurrent. And I just heard somebody talking about the Muslim vote. Let me assure you, I'm in Ghaziabad right now, and I've been to several villages. People are crying out for change. People are looking at Aam Aadmi Party as a serious alternative to the same old Me Too kind of politics. So, and our fight is not just with Narendra Modi, but with this whole system.
Can I interrupt?
Arvind Kejriwal as the
Can
leader
I interrupt? If people are crying out for change, and I'm sure you're right when you say that because you have your ear to the ground, why are they not identifying Arvind Kejriwal as the vehicle that will deliver that change by saying he's their first choice for PM? They're instead opting for Harshvardhan at the CM level and for Mr. Modi at the PM level. So they want change, but they don't believe you'll deliver change. Isn't that the problem for you?
See, I don't know the details of your survey or the opinion poll that you have conducted. I don't know the methodology that has been used. But believe you me, those 49 days in Delhi, a lot of people in Delhi celebrated. They heaved a sigh of relief, especially when it came to small-time corruption and you know, across sales tax offices, across the streets, where for the first time there was no hafta vasuli being conducted by the police where street vendors are concerned. So I think I'm not too sure about that, you know, though I'm sure you have a credible survey to talk about, to quote, but I'm not too sure whether they want a Harshvardhan who has not been who people barely know.
Well, just a moment. Before you become dismissive of Mr. Harshvardhan, remember that in that question about who's your preferred CM, Mr. Harshvardhan has 10% more people supporting him and wanting him than Mr. Kejriwal. Clearly, he's known to them. So that, I think, is an important corrective that I should just bring to notice. Mr. Ram, let me move on beyond what this poll indicates for Aam Aadmi. Clearly, it shows a problem. Their vote is sliding. But when it comes to the Congress party, whether you talk about the PM candidate choice or the CM candidate choice, Congress seems to be out of the picture altogether. Would you, as a journalist, conclude from that Congress has failed to gain any ground at all since the December debacle? And that people like Mr. Arvind Singh Lovely, who are the face of Congress for this election, are not cutting any ice?
Yes, I think the Congress is out of this race.
Carry on.
The Congress is out of this race. Karan, I don't dismiss the findings of opinion polls, but I note with interest and curiosity that when it comes to Delhi, the polls vary considerably. I have with me data from some other polls, and while they show that the gap may be narrowing between AAP and the BJP, AAP is still clearly ahead, and they're predicting 4 or even 5 in some cases against the BJP's 2.
But those polls you're referring to were done 3 weeks
I'm
ago.
a bit skeptical.
But Mr. Ram, the polls you're referring to were done at least 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks later, our sampling is as recent as the 27th and 28th of March. Clearly, there has been a shift and a change that our poll indicates. And what I'm putting to you is this. Do you believe that that shift in change is not just adding to the BJP's support, but it's diminishing Aam Aadmi and perhaps decimating Congress?
I'm not sure of that, Karan. I would be skeptical about the findings. Just because the poll has been done later doesn't mean that it's more accurate than something done a little earlier. I believe, in fact, there is a stable core of support for the Aam Aadmi Party, and of course also the BJP. It may rise or go down a little bit, but there is a core of support, so it can't suddenly diminish by 50 over a matter of weeks by some huge amount.
That's an important...
by 15 or 20 percentage points.